Who is considered the first musical rock star ever? Well, today I want to tell you about a Hungarian composer by the name of Franz Liszt. Actually, Franz Liszt was so much more than just a composer. He was a composer, he was a conductor, he was a pianist, he was a teacher, he was an author, he was even a critic. He did a lot. He was born in 1811 in what is now Austria, but at the time it was Hungary. Franz Liszt showed a lot of musical aptitude, and his father was super proud and was like, oh my gosh, you are so good. And he moved his whole family to Vienna so that Franz Liszt could study under the greatest. He actually even studied under Salieri, who I talked about. It didn't take long for him to perform in front of packed salons where he was just this virtuoso pianist. His father suddenly died, and so he and his mom moved to Paris, where he auditioned to get into the Paris Conservatory, and he was denied, not because he wasn't good, because he was good, but because he was a foreigner. Of course, this did not deter him. He got some private tutors that were very good, and he really got into it. He was a very good performer, not just that he played the notes, but he was interesting to watch and exciting to watch. And in the 30s and 40s, 1830s and 1840s, he had become a very famous pianist, and women would just swoon over him. They would fight over who could have his gloves if he tossed a glove off. And the newspapers invented a new word called Listomania. He traveled constantly. He was performing hundreds of concerts all over Europe, far more than any pianist or any musician ever had before him. Everyone knew his name. Liszt practically invented the solo recital. Before him, pianists would play. Of course, it wasn't a new instrument, but they would play alongside other musicians, or perhaps alongside a chorus or in a court. But he was going on stage all by himself as a solo musician with no other instruments. He wasn't accompanying anybody. It was all about him. Not only that, while he was performing, he did everything from memory, which absolutely astonished the audience, and they were so impressed. Now, all this is standard now, right? If I go to a concert, usually it's by memory, but somebody has to be the first, and there was nothing like this. It was absolutely revolutionary. His playing style was also equally groundbreaking. He was not playing the traditional way. He pushed the piano to its physical limits. Blazing fast octaves, daring leaps, new uses of pedals and tones, brilliant contrast between this power and then this delicacy. It was everything. People, including his colleagues, were just in awe as they watched him make the piano thunder like a whole orchestra, but it was just a piano. Only in his playing and his performing was he very versatile, but in his compositions he was very versatile as well. He wrote wonderful and enthusiastic Hungarian rhapsodies, but he also wrote this deeply spiritual music. He wrote piano concertos, of course, but he also wrote massive choral pieces. And he is most famous for symphonic poems that are just lovely to listen to anytime. They're a new form of orchestral pieces that were telling a story through music. He also was really big on transcribing. He would take things from Bach or from other famous, well-known composers that were long gone, and he would transcribe a whole orchestral piece or a choral piece for just a piano, and understanding which notes were important and which ones could be left off. Not only was he a great composer and performer, he was also a very persuasive writer and music critic. He wrote reviews and articles and even books, pushing artists that he was very interested in, that he believed in, like Berlioz and like Wagner. Not only was his music very dramatic and everything he did was with such flair, but so was his romantic life. He never got officially married. He was involved with two very influential women. First one is Countess Marie de Gaulle, and she was a writer. Now, she was married and she left her husband to be with Liszt. They never got married, but they did have 3 children, including a daughter named Cosima, who later on married Wagner. Later on in life, he formed a deep relationship with Princess Caroline zu Wittgenstein. And she really encouraged him to shift more towards sacred music and spiritual reflection. Both relationships fueled the gossip, right? And Liszt earned both admiration, but also resentment for his charisma. It seemed like he could get anything he wanted, any woman he wanted, the audience he wanted. Later on in life, he kind of became this musical wandering sage. He spent his time in 3 different cities where he had homes in all 3, Weimar, Rome, and Budapest. Age and illness did weaken him. He had a fall that really left him in pain for the rest of his life, but he never stopped teaching. He never stopped composing. Actually, he never even stopped performing. At the end, his life became even more daring and also more introspective. In 1886, he died from complications of pneumonia, leaving behind a world that was absolutely transformed musically. One of the things that I actually think is one of the more interesting things about him is he was such a wild child and out there and outgoing, but at the same time, he kind of had a dual life. He loved going on walks by himself. He was very introspective. He spent a tremendous time alone, practicing piano, composing. He would perform, but yeah, he also spent a lot of time writing books, and he was very smart, but also very flamboyant when he needed to be. He is a phenomenal guy, very prolific. He's written over 700 compositions. I'm sure that most of you already know many of his works, but go and listen to some Franz Liszt, the original rock star, and become a Listomaniac.